Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to another episode of Kaiju Conversation. Joining me, as always, my co-host,
Haxorzilla.
and the man, the myth, the legend, Daikaiju Legends. How are you doing today, Jake?
Not too shabby.
We're really excited to talk tonight because we're discussing with, I would argue, the leading expert on this topic, especially in America. Zone Fighter. I'm gonna say a little bit I know real quick. I believe it came out in the early 70s, I believe right after Godzilla vs. Gigan. I could be wrong. And Jake,
73, same year as Megalon.
Awesome, there we go. Jake, if I say anything wrong, just correct me, because I don't know.
I'm taking
exactly
over this
what I'm
conversation.
It was oriented around a family from outer space, the Zone family that I know of. And every week Zone Fighter would fight either an alien or a kaiju, and had some recognizable monster faces join in a couple of episodes. And it is still yet to see a Region 1 release, which I'm really angry. So, Haxor, do you want to talk about anything you know about Zone Fighter before we let Jake teach us?
The only things I know about it is that his home was destroyed by the Gargoa, I think the name were. I can't remember.
Garoka, yeah.
And that's only because of your series. And I also know that Ghidorah, Gigan, and Godzilla were all in it.
Yep.
So,
That's kind of what everyone knows about it, which is a bit of a shame.
yes, agreed. Because from what I have seen, it's a lot of fun.
Isn't there a terror beast that wields a gun?
Yeah. Oh man, there's a super funny gif of it. Basically, in one episode, I know we're probably getting ahead of ourselves here, but there's an episode where Zone Fighter basically has like a Western duel with this like gunslinging kaiju. I forget which one it is, but Zone Fighter is kind of filled with a lot of just wacky moments like that just come out of nowhere. Is the best part.
Personally, I think that's what makes stuff like that so special. But I guess, Jake, if you want to go ahead and start, we can discuss the story and characters.
Yeah, which I'll do as best I can, because I mean, the unfortunate truth of the matter is that I still have not seen Zone Fighter with subtitles outside of a few episodes. I actually just bought I mean, as far as I know, there hasn't even been like a fan sub that's even gotten major progress on the show. I know there was a Indiegogo or something for a fan sub to be made, and I know it got funded, so I'm not sure what the status is on that. But actually at G-Fest this year, just last month, I bought a bootleg DVD. Well, two bootleg DVDs actually. One is the entire original Zone Fighter show, which is cool to have because I had only been able to watch it online prior to that. It's a bootleg, granted, but you know. And then I also bought a second bootleg DVD, which has the 3 episodes that have Ghidorah and Gigan in them, and those ones are all English subtitled. So, yeah, kind of like you said, main story is that the Zone family, which consists of Zone Fighter, Angel Jr., and Great, who flee to Earth after the Garoga destroyed their planet with a barrage of missiles. Planet Peaceland is their homeworld. And so it kind of starts out like a Rider or Sentai show almost at times. The main heroes all will, do a little pose and they'll transform into, their true Zone Fighter forms, and they'll fight the Garoga aliens. But only Zone Fighter actually has a unique ability where he can actually become a giant-sized hero, which is the moment that you basically realize Zone Fighter was Toho's attempt to cash in on the Ultraman brand, which was probably at its peak popularity, at least until much later in the Heisei era. Just as everyone was doing. I mean, this wasn't even Toho's first attempt at a tokusatsu show. They had done stuff like Godman and Go Green Man, which very extremely low budget compared to Zone Fighter. But those ones also featured some not as big as Godzilla and Ghidorah named kaiju, but they had their share of obscure kaiju, Gabara, Gorosaurus, the Gargantuas, all appearing in these shows.
Was it Manila also in it?
Manila was, yeah. In fact, I think it was Godman, where Manila appeared, and no joking, the plot of that episode is that Manila feasts on the blood of children.
Oh God.
And he has a pacifier in his mouth, and Godman defeats him by taking the pacifier out of his mouth, which makes Manila throw a tantrum. So, Zone Fighter, the show is very much akin to the early Showa Ultra shows, where it's very episodic. There's no huge overarching plot, save for we got to stop the Garoga from invading Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But the show kind of ended before they could resolve whatever plot they had. In the research that I've been able to do, the show basically, it either just wasn't doing as well as they'd hoped, even with Godzilla being a, obviously nowadays people know Zone Fighter solely because that's the one where he teams up with Godzilla. But as far as I know, back in the day, it wasn't performing as well. And so Toho just kind of had to can it because it was higher budget compared to their shows like Green Man. So, yeah, it's very episodic. Every episode, there's a new kaiju to fight. They're called Terror Beasts, actually, in Zone Fighter. Yeah, and that's the basic plot synopsis, as best as I can understand it. I wish I could go into the characters more, but unfortunately, it's hard to get a big grasp without subtitles. But I mean, hopefully that'll change in the future.
Now,
Yeah.
somewhere I heard that the Garoga claimed to be Ghidorah's original creator. Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah, I believe so. Based on the subtitle episode, they basically told that they, because Ghidorah in the Showa Godzilla era, which that is something to mention. Zone Fighter, as far as Toho has said in the past, Zone Fighter is canonical to the Showa Godzilla era, at least like the Megalon timeline and stuff. And Ghidorah just kind of gets tossed around in between alien races as he's used to invade Earth and such. So Zone Fighter they actually kind of gave Ghidorah closure. And yeah, they basically say, yeah, the Garoga created him. That's like his true origin. But also, Zone Fighter is the canonical death of the original Showa Ghidorah, which is different from the one in Destroy All Monsters because that's in the future. But yeah, Zone Fighter was the only time, save for Destroy All Monsters, that Ghidorah actually was killed.
And I believe the same thing goes for Gigan as well, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I don't think don't know if it's the same guy again as the Showa timeline, but he does actually die. Unlike, Godzilla vs. Gigan and stuff and all that, where he just flees the scene, which you kind of realize happens a lot in Showa Godzilla. But yeah, that's probably one of the more interesting aspects of the entire plot to me is that granted, there's no like big tie-in aside from Godzilla and Ghidorah and Gigan being in there, but it's pretty cool to know that there's this other piece of canon that takes place in the Showa continuity, and it's not just the first 15 films or whatever.
Yeah, I did not know that actually that the Garoga created Ghidorah. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure like kaiju origins are contradicted so much in Godzilla, so I'm sure there's some art book or some line in a film that says Ghidorah has different origins, but like given just looking at the surface level of the films and stuff, I'm willing to believe the Garoga just made Ghidorah and let him run amok before they used him to try and kill Zone Fighter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know you weren't on for this episode, but I did create a timeline that I thought it happened in, and I did not include Zone Fighter, and now I need to go back and edit in some Zone Fighter. How I haven't, but do they reference other than Ghidorah, Gigan, Godzilla? Do they reference any of the other monsters or events, or is it very similar to how no show a movie references the other or asks why somebody looks like Dr. Serizawa but with the alternate?
Yeah, it's pretty self-contained. I mean, like you can watch the whole show and not even realize that it's actually canon, which I didn't know until a couple years ago. But yeah, it's really self-contained. I mean, again, unless there's something in subtitles in one of the random 26 episodes somewhere where they say, "Oh, yeah, that's the famous, Dr. Serizawa or whatever." But as far as I know, no, there is no connections outside of having 3 shared kaiju.
Hmm. That is, I did not know that. I'm like freaking out over that. That's so cool. Um, and it ran for 26 episodes, correct?
Yeah, before it was canceled, which yeah, like due to financial issues, I'm trying to like pull it up on the side and see if I can't find some other reason. Apparently the oil crisis that took place in the 1970s had a hand in canceling the show in addition to, some budget stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that kind of ended off on a, you know, not a usual round number like a lot of Toku shows would. A lot would go to straight like 50 episodes or something.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Ultraman only last for 25?
the original Ultraman is 39 or 37, I want to say. Let me fact check that real quick.
I haven't
39
read the
episodes,
back
yeah.
so long. I thought it was in its 20s. Now, Zone Fighter wasn't Toho's first Toku show, like you said.
Hmm.
But was it their first time attempting to rip off Ultraman? Like, if it's not a rip off of Ultraman, I apologize. I said I haven't seen
Oh, it absolutely is a ripoff of Ultraman.
it.
It's, I mean, everyone was doing that at the time. Even
Mm-hmm.
Subaraya was doing their own um, miscellaneous kind of Toku shows with Jumbo Ace and Mirror Man, stuff that didn't really take off, but it was their attempt to be like, hey, here's, it's Ultraman, but new and different.
Mm-hmm.
And Zone Fighter, just, kind of like the rest of them, like Godman, Megaloman, Mirror Man, all these guys just kind of faded into obscurity.
Yeah, and it's quite a shame because from what I've seen, Zone Fighter is very. It's put together fairly well.
It is, yeah.
Uh,
And especially something you'll notice compared to, say, Green Man and Godman, the suits for all the kaiju, like the terror beasts, they're really, really nicely done. And there's a lot of new kaiju, so that's a lot of money that Toho's blowing on all these new kaiju. Which, granted, they probably broke down a lot of suits and reused them for different terror beasts. But
mhm.
like there's nothing about the monster suits or even the production value that you look at and it doesn't make you go, oh, that's not a show level quality thing. Like it's generally the same quality that they were putting into their movies, which granted, we're saying that is the standard for, Godzilla versus Gigan and Godzilla versus Megalon era. So not their greatest work, but it's not.
It's not awful.
Yeah, because if you watch Green Man and Godman, which I compare much more to Red Man, which is a sideshow made by Subaraya, it's just dudes in suits just like hugging it out, whacking each other. Beams aren't really fired much. There's none of that. It's just dudes in suits punching each other on the most basic looking sets. But Zone Fighter is surprisingly high quality for Toho standard at the time.
Now, I know Ultraman, they reused the roars for other kaiju, specifically like the Bolton is the laugh from Matango, the phone is Ghidorah's cackle, and then lots of Godzilla spin-esque roars. Did they do that for Zone Fighter, or did they generally keep it original?
Oh yeah, I think there's a video on YouTube actually that shows like all the kaiju roars from Zone Fighter. Like almost every single one is a reused roar from either something Godzilla or usually Ultraman stuff. You'll hear like a lot of like Gamora roars, Red King roars, Telesdan, all that kind of stuff. Obviously they're modified, some more than others, but yeah, which I mean, not that it's the most distracting thing, because that was kind of the standard during the time. It's just roars were being tossed around, especially a lot of Ultraman shows. You notice the same roars during the show era being used quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I like obviously even Toho wasn't innocent from stealing roars.
Varan, Gorosaurus, and Baragon.
Yeah, which are all like modified roars of the original Godzilla. I mean, Toho stole Chemular's roar, which is a kaiju from the original Ultraman, and they purposed that into Hedorah's roar. So it's just it's a bit not tiresome, but you get accustomed to just hearing a lot of the same roars. But yeah, that is one aspect that is sound design in general. Even that's kind of lacking, because even Ghidorah's roar, Ghidorah doesn't use his like traditional Showa cackle. It still sounds like Ghidorah. You can tell that it's supposed to be him, but
yeah,
it sounds almost like robotic in a way, and it's not to serve any sort of purpose. It's just a cheaper sounding Ghidorah roar.
Yeah, and then I imagine Gigan was the same, because they probably were working with Gigan.
He has a slightly different roar, I think, Gigan, but nothing too far off from what was in versus Gigan and Megalon.
Now, do you know if the episodes with Gigan, Ghidorah, and Godzilla came out before or after Megalon?
Let me see, because the series started airing, what is it, April 2nd of 1973. So let me see when Megalon's release date was. It was April of... Wait, no. That's the US release. Oh, come on. Give me a Japanese release, please. March 17th, 1973. So every episode of Zone Fighter came out after Megalon released. And Godzilla doesn't even appear until the fourth episode, and he's only in 3 or 4 episodes out of the 26, I want to say.
Yeah.
Which makes it a little bit funnier even that it's remembered so much, because it's not even like a fifth of the show that he's in.
Yeah. So maybe that's why Godzilla gets to know and understand Zone Fighter so well, as he's already met Jet, and he's like, oh, it's just another giant robot.
Yeah. Canonically, it takes place after Megalon. as well. Like just at some point between Megalon and Mechagodzilla is when the show takes place. So any time in that period. I don't know if there's any specific, but I mean, yeah, it came out like less than a month after Megalon, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for abilities, I know that in the first season of Zone Fighter that you made, he has this like sword thing that comes out of his wrist.
Oh yeah.
Does he use that in the actual show?
No, that was just some power that I made up completely for the show. I don't use that ability anymore. Can't remember why I made it. I think it was just Zone wanting to have Zone discover some new ability. But yeah, Zone's abilities in the original show, he's got a good few, but nothing as crazy as a sword arm, as cool as that would be.
No, I'm also assuming that same thing goes for the Specium Gauntlet.
Yeah, that was an original thing.
Speaking of special abilities, I believe Zone Fighter had machine gun hands.
Wrists.
Yeah.
Wrists.
So he's got his little the white gloves, like all the Ultraman-esque characters had.
Yeah.
But Zone was kind of unique in that he would turn his wristbands basically into missile gauntlets. And so yeah, they basically just became little Gatling guns. And that was one of Zone's finisher moves. The other being his Proton Beam, which is his little beam that he fires from the little antenna on his head, which is very definitely some sort of a take on that kind of move, which a lot of Ultramen would do, like Ultra 7 and
Yeah.
Ultraman Ace.
Out of curiosity, do you know where and why they chose the name Zone Fighter?
So the show itself it's not called Zone Fighter. That was just an English trademark made by Toho. In Japan, the show was called Ryusei Ningen Zone, which means like zone, the human meteor. So I mean, I'm not sure why Zone was chosen as the name of the family, because obviously they all share that same surname there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all Fighter, Angel, and Junior, Great. So not sure why, but I mean that's just the name they've chosen to trademark. Obviously, they call him Zone Fighter in the show and the theme songs and stuff, but that mainly caught on, I guess, as an English thing when they trademarked that and basically branded the show as really, really little branding that they've done in the States for Zone Fighter. They've just referred to it as Zone Fighter.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, what have they done stateside for Fighter?
Like honestly, it's so little. Like I think he's maybe appeared or been referenced in a couple, maybe a comic or something. It's such a struggle to find what like officially he's been in the States, because pretty much Zone's only ever appearance was in the show, and he's done nothing outside of that. So I think obviously people have found out about it, probably just through clips being spread online. But as far as I know, like the trademark is kind of the biggest thing they've done, in that they gave it an official English name. Perhaps, they were planning to distribute it in the States, but after they canceled the show, I mean, because it's even seen not the most like rare limited releases in Japan. But if you look up like the official DVD sets from, I think like 2012 was the most recent one, they go for a pretty penny now. Like it's quite a piece to own the whole official box set. But I mean, like interviews and stuff has stated that I think some video game Zone Fighter was slated to have an appearance in. Don't know which one that was, but yeah, it seemed like they wanted to do more with Zone Fighter, but perhaps just unfortunate circumstances led them to kind of just leaving it in the dust and sweeping it under the rug just a tad, just kind of forgetting that it existed.
Yeah, I wonder now, because they have the Godzilla division of Toho, I wonder if Zone Fighter falls under that banner, Godzilla Toho. If it's just sitting somewhere in Toho Studios, just on a shelf, collecting dust.
I'd be curious to know, like, I don't expect them to ever do much with it, like even a stateside DVD release. I would never expect that to happen. Would be incredible if it did, but I mean, for the time being, because even in Japan, he's just gone under the radar. The only toys you see of Zone Fighter are like the weird evolution toy ones that they've made. There's like a Giga Brain, but
What about the Bullmark Terror Beasts?
those I don't remember when those were made, but there are a lot of figures of the Terror Beasts made by is it Marmot or Bullmark? I think it's one of those.
I believe in a video before you said that multiple companies have made different ones.
I think, yeah.
But I do know for sure that
I know there's a Spyler has a Marmot. I know there's a Bullmark of something, but yeah, there is some merchandising there. There's some toys that exist, but pretty much all of them are, just like the show itself, really, really hard to come across nowadays, at least for a manageable price. But
now, what exactly are the aliens in Zone Fighter?
The Garoga are basically just, they're almost like the generic aliens that you see in like a Sentai show or something. They're a planet that existed alongside Peaceland, the planet Garoga, and I would need to refresh and see like what the exact reasoning is, but I think it's just as simple as they want to take over other planets, and so they blow up Peaceland, and then now they're trying to take over the Earth and stop the Zone family from halting their progress. So just kind of a basic alien race. They don't do too much, but they're pretty interesting looking. But I mean, yeah, there's not too much to say about them, unfortunately.
Yeah. Now, is it for 60s and 70s US TV standards, is it as violent as something, say, like Johnny Sacco, where there's people getting gunned down like every episode?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, there's some like semi-gruesome monster moments, which I mean obviously is a product of, that happened in the show era a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a specific Terror Beast fight where Zone like presses his meteor missile gauntlet into the chest of a kaiju, and you see like all the bullets fly out the other side, spurting blood. But obviously that happens alongside weird moments like the gunslinging kaiju having a duel with Zone, among many other weird moments. But from what I'm able to, it's not too violent. Obviously, it's meant to market toward children and make Toho more money. But yeah, it's not nothing too crazy.
Now, do you know who was in charge of naming things? Because, I mean, there's some pretty crazy names in this series, like Terror Beasts for the Kaiju, Zone Fighter. Do you know why they picked these kind of obscure random names for these, or is that just like
I think it's just, a product of
Toho and
maybe wanting to be unique. I wish I, could learn the whole big thought process. If there even was one for the show, it might have just been as simple as, oh, they're big scary monsters. Call them terror beasts.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ultraman just kind of referred to them as kaiju monsters. Ultraman Ace, which came out a year before Zone Fighter, which Zone Fighter stole a lot from Ultraman Ace, actually, including Zone Fighter's grunts. And Ace kind of was a little bit. They named their kaiju in that show Choju, which means super beast. So it could be, for all I know, it could just be Toho's response to that, being like, "Oh, we have a cool, unique name for our monsters too." But
yeah,
there's not too much out there in the way of info on that.
Now, I do know that Zone Fighter also had some familiar faces directing episodes. Am I correct?
I believe so. I'd have to get a refresher. I think there was some director of a Godzilla episode, but as far as I remember, yes, there was someone.
I think it may have... Yeah, I looked this up. Shiro Honda and Jun Fukuda both did episodes.
Yeah, I remember Honda. Yeah, I couldn't remember Fukuda. But yeah, I don't know which ones in particular they worked on or how many. I'm assuming not a ton, but yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, watching the show, can't really tell that an episode's like, oh, that's a Honda directed episode, but it's still a neat piece of trivia, though.
Yeah. So yeah, I've now resulted to fandom, to see. There is not a lot of info on this series at all. So I guess we can go ahead and move on to the kaiju, or in this case, terror beasts. What's some standout terror beasts that really caught your eye?
My favorite one is Balgaras, I think is the name. And he's a terror beast that he's pretty cool. He's got here. I'll send a picture of him in chat here, just so you can see who I'm talking about. But he has two forms actually. He has a kaiju form, and he has a ball form. Like he pretty much just curls up almost Anguirus style. Yeah, here's the ball form right here.
And for everybody at home, to kind of describe this to you, so he kind of reminds me of G. Phantus with the spines.
In a way.
And I do like it. It's very interesting. Haxor, maybe you're better at describing things than me. How would you describe this?
Looking at the spines, I'm trying to think here.
He's got like Zilla style spines almost, where they curve like toward the head.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm trying to. I know that I'm relating him to something, but I can't remember what, or can't think of what. I don't know why, but the face kind of reminds me of Telesdon in a way.
I think he does use the Telesdon roar. Actually, is the funny thing.
But for my favorite terror beast, I'd have to say it's the gunslinging one.
Yeah, he's wacky. I love that one. There's also a Zandola whose entire head is a giant drill. He's pretty funny. There's one that looks like a giant like German Shepherd dog, and he's got robot parts on him.
Very unique designs.
Yeah, that's for sure. They kind of just like scream Showa Tokusatsu kaiju, like just totally bonkers, wacky looking, but a lot of them are pretty memorable. Obviously, a lot of people probably at least are able to recognize Warkigar and Spyler, who are two kaiju that Godzilla and Zone Fighter teamed up against, and they're both pretty cool designs. Spyler, I don't know if he is, but he very much looks like a modified Vakishim.
Yeah, he looks like a
Ultraman Ace.
He looks like a mix from like a robot, Vakishim, and Velcro in the back.
And then
yeah, a lot of these
Wargilgar is really cool. He's kind of like a weird, buggy looking dude, but
I don't know why, but when I look at him, I kind of think of King.
You know, what's funny is I'm looking at these, and some of these scream Ultraman to me.
Definitely Ace.
Yeah. And, real quick, I just thought of something. So, as we all know, Mill Creek is releasing all of the Ultraman series in America, which I personally never thought we would get. I thought we would always be missing. Do you think Mill Creek, if they were given the rights to do it and the request to do it, do you think they would do Zone Fighter? Jake?
if they somehow got the ability to distribute Zone Fighter, that would be incredible. But since it is a Toho-owned thing, I don't really see that happening. I mean, considering Toho already doesn't really invest much effort into Zone Fighter as is, let alone giving the rights to other people. But I would love to see that happen if it somehow did.
Yeah, especially now that I feel like if they were to do it, I think people would be interested, especially if they wanted to get some of that sweet Godzilla money and slap him somewhere covered.
Definitely.
So, oh, go ahead, Haxor.
I was just gonna ask if you know how much rights Zone Fighter is, like to have him in like the MonsterVerse maybe, which would be like a one, like not even like a. Trying to think of.
I was gonna say it's like never would happen probably, but I think it'd be hilarious if he somehow worked his way in, even as like a reference somehow.
Yeah,
that would be hilarious, and I might cry tears of joy.
Like maybe it could be a one-liner if they do decide to add like it could be like a one-liner like, oh look, Godzilla's fighting in the zone.
Right. I mean, yeah, that'd be incredible if they work that in somehow. I mean, considering it's such an obscure piece of Godzilla history as is, let alone, the main people who write the MonsterVerse. I mean, I'd be shocked if, tweet at Michael Dougherty asking, "Oh, what's your thoughts on Godzilla and Zone Fighter?" And he just goes, "Huh?" But yeah, in my dreams, I would love to see that happen.
It would be awesome.
I feel like if he were to be in the MonsterVerse, he would be used as a TV
propaganda.
That'd be funny to see.
Now, is there any other terror beasts or anything that have really spoken to you?
Aside from some cool designs, a lot of them kind of wind up being generic kaiju. They do some neat stuff with Ghidorah a little bit. I mean, like I already mentioned, he gets canonically killed off in Zone Fighter. But they give him an interesting ability in one of his episodes. He either like wields or is imbued with something called like a dark prism, and basically blocks out the sun.
Oh, I've
Not
heard
not
that.
not Ghidorah himself, but he uses that power to basically stop the sun from shining on the earth, which in the show's context, apparently just makes everything look like eternal sunset. But
And doesn't he do something that makes like anti-gravity like kind of like mess up or something?
yeah, and there's a funny clip where Zone Fighter like reaches for some floating cars and like gently sets them all back down on the ground one by one. But yeah, aside from that, Ghidorah's the same. He's got the same gravity beams. There's a couple scenes where he flaps his wings abnormally fast and makes some huge winds that blow Zone Fighter away. But Gigan's, Gigan could be replaced with any other kaiju, and you wouldn't know the difference really. But yeah, there's aside from that, a lot of Terror Beast and Zone Fighter, at least to me, compared to some Ultraman kaiju, they don't tend to stand out as much. Maybe because we only ever saw them in Zone Fighter. A lot of them have cool designs, but they're standard Toku kaiju. They're fodder for the main hero to do some cool action scenes with.
Yeah. So, Haxor, do you have anything else you'd like to bring up or discuss about stuff like that?
Do you know if any suits were reused for like some kaiju?
I would assume within the show they probably reused some Terror Beast suits to just they killed off one Terror Beast and then just kind of say, well, we're never gonna use this kaiju again. We'll just put the resources toward a new one down the line. But I haven't been able to find many official sources that say whether or not they did. But it would not shock me at all if one or more of the suits got recycled into some other kaiju.
Speaking of suits, do you know what happened to Zone Fighter after he retired?
There's actually some surviving Zone Fighter props that Toho had on display at some event a while back. And I know I retweeted some of them, but they have like the original Zone Fighter flying prop for when he would fly through the air. The suit, I want to say, still is intact. Obviously, really, really, really worn. But they never used it for anything else, so it just kind of rotted away a little bit and sat collecting dust. But as far as I know, at least a good majority of it still exists. I think
I did not think that would be a thing.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it back on my Twitter. But along with that, I think that a car or a plane prop, one of the little miniatures, survived. One of the ray guns from the Zone family. And I don't know what else. I'll keep going back and try to find this little.
While you're looking for that, it's just a thought, but it would be awesome if Evolution Toys made Terror Beast figures.
I would kill for some Terror Beast figures. They would probably have terrible quality.
Yeah, but at least you still get them.
It'd be cool to see, because I unfortunately don't own any Terror Beast figures, just because they're all hyper expensive. Like 200 at the least, upwards of 300 to 400. There's some super rare collectibles that go for like 500, I want to say.
Yikes.
But yeah, it's crazy.
Well, with the power of Patreon.
You can make our dreams a reality at patreon.com/Daikaiju Legends. Here it is. Found the tweet. So, yeah, the Zone Fighter suit, at least the chest piece it looks like, and the helmet, There's some dolls of the Zone family, some of the Terror Beast missiles, the helmets actually of the human forms of Zone Fighter and Angel still exist, and one of the guns. I can't find the one of the flying prop, but it exists.
It's kind of surprising that out of everything, Toho kind of still has a lot of major parts of Zone Fighter, considering there's nothing destroy all monsters.
Yeah, I mean, it could be that this was the start of them preserving suits a little better. I mean, because the Showa Mechagodzilla suit, granted, really heavily modified to preserve it, but they still tote that around every so often. So it could be the kind of beginning of that era where they started to respect the suits. I mean, I imagine wherever they stored the suit, it just sat collecting dust for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So they never really did much else.
Well, I think we can all agree that if the suit somehow ends up going missing, we know who stole it.
Monster Island Buddies. We did
it. Real quick, going back to DVDs. So according to Wikizilla, there have been 2 releases of the entire series. One was a single release of 6 volumes of Zone Fighter, and then a entire TV box set that I believe you were referring to.
Yeah, that sounds correct.
That's kind of sad. There's not even a Blu-ray.
Yeah, I mean the digital restoration on the most recent DVD is pretty nice looking. I mean, obviously, I would love to see it in full HD remastered on Blu-ray, but yeah, like as far as I know, there wasn't much of a lead up to them re-releasing it. It might have been for a 40th anniversary or something, but yeah, it's just kind of odd that they threw that in there. As cool as it is, not a cool price, but
yeah. Well, hopefully we should. Okay, everybody listening to this, start adding Mill Creek Entertainment every day. When are you getting Zone Fighter? We're going to make this a reality. Somebody needs to start a petition.
Hashtag Zone Fighter for Mill Creek.
Yes. Yes.
If you want my honest opinion, what might be a better investment would be to tweet at Toku HD, who is a Toku streaming platform. You can get on Amazon Prime and stuff, and they have tons of Ultraman shows, including stuff that has never been subtitled before, like Mirror Man. And me and my friend Taylor both tweeted at them at one point asking if they would ever do Zone Fighter as a release, and they kind of just responded. As far as I remember, they responded with, "Oh, we're always taking requests, so we'll see what the people want." So I mean, let me find their Twitter handle and we can slap that in there.
Let's get this started.
Yeah, at Toku HD. You gotta let these guys know that we want to see Zone Fighter be streamed online with English subs.
We are going to bring Zone Fighter to America. That is my goal for this podcast. So, in about 3 months when we get that announcement, Zone Fighter coming to America. We started it. We're starting a revolution. And if Toho does not allow us, we're going to storm Toho. So we've been talking for a good amount about, the kaiju, the releases, distribution and all that. So I think to wrap things up here, for anybody that at home that doesn't know, when you look up Zone Fighter on YouTube, you don't get Zone Fighter. Well, official Zone Fighter. You get Jake's artwork.
which is
his stuff
arguably better.
better. Yeah. So it says something that even YouTube kind of says Jake's stuff here is better, more relevant than the original stuff, which I think should be eventually considered canon and given a actual embargo by Toho that it's official.
That'd be awesome.
So, Jake, how has Zone Fighter impacted you as a filmmaker, content creator, and overall tokusatsu fan?
So Zone Fighter, in a way, was kind of my introduction to stuff outside of Godzilla. 'Cause when I was younger, I was a big Jet Jaguar fan. I'm like, oh yeah, Godzilla teaming up with a robot. And so this is way back in the days when like Google Video was a thing, like separate from YouTube. And like on there, by some happenstance, I came across the Godzilla and Zone Fighter versus Wargula and Spyler battle. And I watched that. I'm like, oh man, this guy he looks sick. He's not a robot. He's like an alien or something. And so I kind of got a bit attached to him there. And the thing as a kid, I could never remember his name. And so like I would always have to do like endless searching before I found the video again. This is when I'm like 8 years old or something, I want to say, maybe even younger. And so that show basically introduced me to the idea of, this giant hero that fights kaiju. You don't have to, in a series of like 20 to 24 minute episodes instead of, watching a whole movie just to see Godzilla pop up. And shortly after Zone Fighter, I wound up finding Ultraman, also by happenstance, just because it was in kind of a related video section, obviously. I wonder why. But so over time, I became super, super engrossed in Ultraman. And, when I started up my channel, I'm like, oh man, I want to do a, like my own little fan-made Ultra show. Being inspired by like, Godzilla and His Amazing Friends and Deadzilla stuff all back in the time. And eventually I was developing ideas for the show that I wanted to do like over and over again in my head. And I went through all sorts of Ultramen, doing like original storylines for all of them. Even coming up with like a custom Ultraman design once or twice. And eventually I stumbled across Zone Fighter again. And I was like, oh my god, I remember this dude. And I, fell in love with him all over again. And I'm like, hey, like what if I use Zone Fighter almost like, the same way he got me into Ultraman through knowing, Godzilla was in Zone Fighter. Maybe I can do the same thing. So I was like, Zone Fighter, he's a pre-existing character, but he doesn't have this big, elaborate character and backstory. So it'd be cool to, develop my own interpretation and maybe use it to help other G fans that kind of just ignore the Ultra series get into that.
Mm-hmm. And I think you have definitely done that. People that don't know what Zone Fighter is are introduced to your series, so you've definitely accomplished that feat of introducing people to a very obscure character.
Yeah, which is super cool to say. Obviously, there's the people that still come on and say, oh, where's the Godzilla and the Toho villains?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the point. But, just goes to show, how much people attach Zone Fighter to Godzilla.
But what people don't know is that off screen, Zone and Godzilla are cuddle buddies.
Oh god, that's an older reference.
And real quick, speaking of Zone Fighter and Godzilla being buddies, uh, I think we can all agree that the original reason, and I think they even confirmed this, why Toho did put Godzilla in, is just for that little sweet cash he has. And I think we can all agree that it may have not worked then, but definitely now it has attracted people to this unknown series.
Yeah, I mean, people, they've latched onto it so much based on that simple fact, which is pretty interesting. I mean, because, I wonder about the number of Godzilla fans that have only seen Godzilla stuff of Zone Fighter, and they haven't really watched the rest of the show. Obviously, if they care about nothing else other than Godzilla, they'll be disappointed to find out that Toho Kaiju only take up about 5 or 6 of the whole 26 episode runtime.
Mm-hmm. And if I guess we'll move on to your series, Zone Fighter. We've done a somewhat gloss over it, but we're going to come back around and now talk about it a little bit. So, recently, Zone Fighter Season 2, Episode 7 was released to the public, unless you saw it at G-Fest. I unfortunately did not attend the event. Is there, Haxor, I'll let you ask a few questions here, if you'd like.
So for episode ideas, like how do you like choose the kaiju? Like what makes you like, for example, choose Ho for episode 3? Is like there any like real meaning behind that?
Sometimes there is, like Ho as an example, because he's an Ultraman 80 kaiju, which they explained in that show. The kaiju all are basically formed and exist from negative emotions from humans. So that plays into the story a bit.
So that's
a lot
what
of the times,
Ghostbusters got it.
but a lot of the time the kaiju tend to just be, my favorite kaiju that I'm kind of like, oh, these guys don't really get enough attention.
Yeah, and
Or they're like under, newer kaiju. Obviously, like we used Snake Darkness in episode 7, which is a kaiju that debuted in March of this year in the Ultraman Rube movie. I was kind of like, oh, he's cool looking, but they don't really do much with him. So I mean, it's a lot of just personal preference.
That's another thing. You've made me look at like kaiju like Ho, Lunatics, and recently Alien Godzilla much differently.
Yeah, which is awesome to hear. I love giving love to the weird, obscure ultra dudes.
You're here for the little guy, in other words.
Yeah, I guess so.
But, when you made Zone Fighter Season 1, Episode 1, did you think you would blow up to be a pretty successful fan base like it is?
I'm sure as like a I say young kid, but that was just like 4 or 5 years ago. I was like, oh, like I hope I get like a lot of views on this series, but I didn't really expect much of it. It was more so just from pure passion. I wouldn't even say it's gotten massive since then, but I mean, people keep watching it, which is humbling in itself to me. But it's just cool to know on its own that people enjoy watching it in the first place. Whether I'm getting like 10 views or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000 or something. But yeah, it's a cool feeling either way.
Yeah, I always find myself watching an episode at least once a week.
That's crazy. I can't watch my own stuff once in a month.
Haxor, is there anything else you would like to ask him about Zone Fighter?
I'm trying to think of something here.
When's Godzilla showing up?
I
Do you
guess
have
while Hex... Oh, go ahead.
do you have plans to include any terror beasts in like future episodes?
I really, 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 really want to, but it's mainly a matter of first of all getting toys of the terror beasts that I would want to include.
Well, you
For
could
sure.
you could always maybe like commission like Yao to like turn a figure into one.
Yeah,
Via
which
Patreon.
yeah, um, yeah, which I have considered before, which would be quite a huge undertaking because I mean any of them are going to be a massive resculpt. But I mean, kind of like I pointed out earlier, it probably wouldn't be impossible. Spyler looks like a redone Vakshim suit, so it's probably not totally out of the question. But yeah, I no set in stone plans, but I would absolutely love to include some original Zone Fighter kaiju at some point.
Awesome.
Now I was just wondering, other than the passion and the want to make, what inspired you to go in the way it's going?
Like the where the plot's going and stuff, or
Yeah.
so the first season one was just kind of its own thing. Um, Mainly just inspired by Ultraman. Maybe it's a lot, and I was like, oh, I want an Ultraman that's not that good at being an Ultraman, and he has to learn how to act like an Ultraman, which they've kind of done in a lot of the newer shows. But season two has been a lot of me working to make a better overall story and characters, because obviously I'm working with a big human cast now. But episode 7 was actually, I mean, because that's the first episode that was not written by me. A lot of that episode, when me and my friend Nick, who wrote that episode, a lot of it was inspired by our experience with like the our own filmmaking and the Godzilla fan film community, and we're like, there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on. Like, a lot of the times we don't know what we're doing. And going forward, there's definitely a lot of character focus going forth in the show, and a lot of it's inspired by. I mean, I hate saying like, raw emotion because that sounds pretentious to say, but a lot of one thing they teach you in film school is to write yourself. It's not to say like write yourself into a story, but write stuff that speaks to you. And so going forward, I've kind of wanted to use Zone Fighter as an outlet for just channeling whatever I'm feeling creatively, and use it. It's always been a platform to me to be experimental in a way. It's my own personal playground that I can learn stuff as I'm doing it. And going forward, like we kind of take that even further, where we plan to get quite experimental, especially by like tokusatsu show standards, with a lot of the plot lines and general tone, especially, without revealing much.
Yeah.
I
That's
have two more questions. Now, the first one is, will we end up seeing the Oribiter Spark, I think you called it? The thing that like captures dead kaiju. Will we see that return ever?
Perhaps. I've thrown around ideas of what happened to the Perimeter Spark, because obviously at the end of season 1, nothing's really acknowledged about it, and Father of Ultra gives the SS Zone emblem, peace emblem to Zone, which becomes the new transformation item in season 2. So I've thrown around some ideas. It may not be a major plot line, but I hope to try and work it in some way to at least where it's explained a little bit, like, oh, this thing used to, it disappeared or broke or something. I don't know, but at some point we'll probably see it again.
All right. And now my second question is, will the fan fiction canon?
Donate to the Patreon. A joke, but in an alternate timeline where TB runs rampant in the universe,
God.
even among robots, perhaps it'll be canon.
So does anybody have any final thoughts on Zone Fighter, or hopes, or wishes, or...
Well, I think Jake has been doing a very good job on bringing the character justice.
Well,
Agreed.
that's flattering to hear. I mean, that's part of what I tried to do. I want to, do some cool, new, inventive stuff with this, long forgotten character. I don't know, like how much you guys might know about this, but in Ultraman Zero's second movie back in 2012, I want to say maybe 2011, something like that. They brought back Superia brought back some of their old obscure Toku heroes, like that I was mentioning earlier, Fireman, Mirrorman, and Jumbo Ace. They brought back and basically gave completely new designs and names and abilities and stories and the works, and just made them completely new characters. But they're very much still these classic Toku characters, and so I've in a way kind of been wanting to be like, let's reinvent Zone Fighter, and using the original series as like a base, kind of just make a new take on this old weird character.
Now, I did have one question I've been wondering. When will we get Zone Fighter the movie?
Yes.
Well, I mean, without saying too much, I mean, I've thought about it. I don't know what would constitute as a movie. I guess we're talking feature length, because episode 7 was nearly an hour long.
Yeah.
Would have been an hour, or probably would have been much over an hour if we didn't have a couple scenes we had to cut for time and scheduling purposes. But we've got stuff in the works. I mean, people at G-Fest saw something special that's coming much later down the pipeline.
Ooh.
That could be somewhat considered that, but when that time comes, I guess we'll see if it's the Zone Fighter movie that I've seen a couple people request, actually, especially like after season 1 ended. But yeah, it's a big undertaking, but it'd be cool to do.
Yeah.
How long do you plan on making season 2? Because I really don't want to see the series end.
I don't have a set end episode yet, because a lot of the latter part of the series is still being written and refined. Because I've got we've got episodes coming up that are being written by more people other than me. Albert's writing an episode and Taylor's writing an episode. But over 10 for sure, 100%.
Awesome.
My guess is a bit over 15. It could be closer to 20, but I mean, I would love for this series to go on forever. But
when you finish Zone Fighter, are you planning on branching out on and making other things?
Oh, very, very much so. Like, part of me is like, man, I'm excited for Zone Fighter to be over, but I'm also not, because I love it. It's the same show, counting both seasons, that I've been working on, dedicating my life to for the past 4 or 5 years or so. But whenever that bridge is crossed and the series eventually ends, we have other plans. Like, we kind of want to branch out into some, like, kind of a experimental filmmaking stuff with Mobile Suit Gundam. We want to try some stuff with their Evangelion, we've been spitballing stuff randomly sometimes. Obviously, a traditional Godzilla fan film would be fun to do at some point. But yeah, absolutely, I would love to. I mean, eventually, the end goal, of course, is we get to make our own original tokusatsu show with Suitmation and all that. But obviously, that is very far down the line. Unless you support Patreon right now.
If each person donates $100.
My God, if every person that watches Zone Fighter donated $100, it would be a
You'd be
God,
able to have
insane.
5 movies with Suitmation full
Yeah.
with Robert Downey Jr. starring in them.
The amount of times that I've like come this close to wanting to ditch the Zone Fighter figure and get a suit have been too many that I could count. But obviously, that's an expensive venture. But I know the exact cost of it and what it would take to get it done. But it's a matter of, do I completely abandon the stop motion style that has, in a way, kind of become the heart and soul of the show, and try to mix like a suit with stop motion? There's all sorts of weird caveats that come with switching to suits. As much as I would love it to be like, let me just flick a switch and bam, we're suddenly using suits. But
But I'm worried that if you get too advanced, that Toho's gonna like take it down, because I think that's what happened with Godzilla Heritage.
Heritage, as far as I know, the main reason they got taken down was because they were raising money. Granted, it was going toward the making of the film, but they were still doing a fundraiser with Godzilla being the namesake, which, that's an easy way for lawyers to step in and just be like, oh no, you're trying to make money in the name of Godzilla? No, because I mean, they say they're putting all this money into a fan film, but they can't really prove that 100% of that money is being used solely for a creative fan work, and not, because if you're spending even a penny for yourself using someone else's copyright material, they're going to get angry about that. But I mean, I've somehow managed to fly under Toho's radar, unless they're like secretly watching and just giggling in their seats at this poor boy trying to use this old tokusatsu hero. But yeah, that's something that's been brought up a couple times when I've mentioned ways of increasing the scope or the production value of the show. Recently I've been looking into photo scanning figures and turning them into 3D models and trying to rig them and try some motion capture work. But
now that's beyond my like comprehension.
That's been a rabbit hole that I've been diving into. But it's, if something works out like that, I would love to advance the show. But yeah, at the same time, I kind of feel like the stop motion aspect is a little bit of the heart and soul of the show, where it's, this kind of animation type that, at least for kaiju films, hasn't been abandoned, but the amount of people doing it has definitely decreased over the years. It's nowadays it's a lot of MMD, source filmmaker, or just bashing Bandai's together, which it's still toys, but like, and you still see stop motion. Obviously, Deadzilla finally released his 4th chapter of Rise of the Darkness, which is amazing, and that he brought back this stop motion style that he was doing back in the day, and it looks amazing. But yeah, you don't get to see that too often. But then again, you don't see people doing full suits or full motion capture either. So it's it's a bit of a internal battle if I want to officially like take that plunge or not.
I know personally, I've done a few fan films. I do stop motion, but the time it takes to do it is so it's very time consuming, and whenever you're trying to juggle school, work,
Oh
podcast,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and everything, it's like I have one weekend to do 5 minutes of stop motion, and to make it look good, you got to spend a little bit of time, especially when you're still getting used to the art of stop motion, and it's amazing how long it takes to just do a 10-second scene.
Hmm.
Yeah. And something that's kind of like confused me about stop motion is that I don't know, like, for example, if I'm making it 23 frames per second, like, do I take 23 pictures to equal like a second, or like, because
Yes.
like I don't know how to sync up like the stop motion with, like, for example, like a roar. Like, I don't know how many pictures I would take to equal that roar.
I just wing it.
I
I
was just gonna
overlay a
say
roar.
it's yeah. Truth of the matter for me is I just 100% of the time I just go with it. Um, I haven't. There's been a couple times where I've like synced stop motion to dialogue or something, and I've um done that. There's a video back in the day, Godzilla vs. Manila, where Godzilla says a couple lines of dialogue, and I synced that up. Um, but yeah, a lot of the time, because I also use some tools in editing to smooth out the stop motion a bit, um, and make it a little bit slower or faster depending on if there's a roar I'm trying to match up with. But I don't know. I guess over the years of doing it, I've grown somewhat accustomed to just totally going with the flow and guessing almost, but making it work is the challenge.
Mhm.
And for like when you're doing stop motion, I know don't ask how I know this, but I know that you use 23 frames per second, and uh how many like pictures do you take to like make it look smooth like that? Like, do you move it very subtly, or do you like do like little gaps?
I always try to do as subtly as I can. Obviously, with some of the figures that I use, like the Zone Fighter figure itself, the joints don't always allow for subtle movement, which sucks. But that's just sometimes the engineering on the figure. But my thing with stop motion, I always try to be as subtle as possible, because you can always delete frames in post to make the motion look better, but you can't add them back in, or you know without refilming the whole scene or something. Um, but there's definitely times where I'll just be like, all right, it's a shot that's going to last for a fraction of a second. I can slack a little bit and just do a quick 1-2 animation or something. But
Well, I guess the last thing here is I know personally I'd like to, but what's something that you use to motivate yourself to make a episode of Zone Fighter? We work on a full-length feature film in the future. What's something you go by motivation?
a lot of the times, people say it's bad to compare yourself to others. You should be your own person and stuff. But like a lot of the time, my biggest motivators are, I'll see, new episodes of Ultraman, and they're doing, especially Ultraman Taiga in particular, has been a big inspiration lately. We're watching that. They have a lot of really cool camera tricks and visual effects stuff that they haven't done for Ultraman before, really. And I'll see that and I go, okay, like I gotta try something like that now. So I'm constantly like kind of comparing myself to what's above me. And I'm like, all right, let me get to this level, and then I'll look for the next place to shoot to. I mean, earlier this year we did a video on Ultraman transformation toys. We remade, I want to say, 6 henshin sequences from the new shows, shot for shot, and I did visual effects completely from scratch to match them. And that was a big case of, me looking at Like, okay, what's Subaraya doing for these? And am I at the point that I can recreate it basically the exact same way that they did? And so that's a lot of what I do. I don't know. I compare myself to like fan films all the time, what other people are doing, which I think that's a a good thing. Obviously, not striving to be like I'm the biggest, bestest fan film maker on YouTube, but just people.
That statement is correct.
All right. Well, now you're trying to inflate my ego, but just people looking at each other and seeing their peers here on YouTube as motivators, even if they're not directly, trying to get you out to do something. If you're watching something like that and you're feeling motivated to, oh, I want to be like that, or I want to try a shot like that. That's what tends to get me most inspired. I'll just get in my head while I'm like driving to school or work or something, and I'll be thinking about all these shots that I want to try and stuff, and how can I replicate this upper level stuff that I'm seeing, and take it a step further.
Now, for me, I'd have to say my biggest motivations are probably the MonsterVerse and this guy called Daikaiju Legends.
Damn.
Well, I guess we've reached the end. That's a good note to end it on. Jake, where can people find you or support you?
Well, on YouTube, obviously Daikaiju Legends, but I mean, if you look up Zone Fighter, usually I tend to be one of the first results somehow. Twitter, find me there as well, Daikaiju Legends. We have a Patreon that people can donate to, and they'll get cool rewards and stuff, and all that money goes back into making our productions bigger and better.
Donate to the Patreon.
Yeah, if you want to see, if you want to see an official DVD release of Zone Fighter in the States, support the Patreon. I'm legally obligated to say that Patreon ad, yeah. I'm legally obligated to say I cannot release a DVD, but yeah, and then I guess that's where I'm found, really. So
awesome. Of course, for the podcast, follow us on Twitter at Kaiju_Converse, KAIJU_CONVERS. You can ask us any questions, comment, or even give us a review. If you rate us on iTunes, that's greatly appreciated. That always helps our ratings. But if you don't have a Twitter, or you don't have an Apple device, or don't want to rate us on iTunes, email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com. All lowercase, all one word. And like I said, we'll read off your reviews. We gladly take any criticism. And we really enjoy that constructive criticism, because that not only helps us, that helps you guys, because you get the better content from us. If you haven't already, join our Discord server. That can be found in the About page of our channel, in the descriptions of our YouTube videos, or on our Twitter. We also have merchandise. If you want it, it's by TeePublic, or if you look up Kaiju Conversation shirts, it probably pops up. It's like TeePublic or something that has it.
Teespring, I think?
Teespring, yeah. If you want to, gladly appreciated. I think it helps the podcast. I'm not sure. I just received an email one day, and it said, make some shirts, and I was like, okay, might as well. So I don't know, if you want to go for it. If you haven't already, subscribe to. I'm sorry. I'm speaking too much. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's greatly appreciated. And follow us on any platform possible. That's always great. And a very special thanks to our editor Justice for editing these episodes. We greatly appreciate it, and this podcast could not do it without him. Now Haxor, where can we find you?
You can find me at the YouTube channel of Haxorzilla, and you can find me at the Twitter handle of Haxorzilla129.
Awesome. And I am your host, ET13 Productions. And I believe, I hope, you can find me on YouTube as ET13 Productions. So, yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I think this has been a great talk. Very informative. I know I learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. And this has been one heck of a Kaiju Conversation, where we talk big every week. I'm working on. I cannot. Somebody help me with how I should do send-offs. Good night and
Worship
yeah.
space bananas.
Yes, worship space bananas right there. Boom, perfect. Thank you guys.